The massive alien ship appeared over Earth without warning. It hung in the sky like a silver cloud, stretching 3 miles from end to end. For 6 days, it remained silent. World leaders argued about what to do. Military forces went on high alert. Regular people looked up at the sky in fear and wonder. On the 7th day, the ship sent a message. "We come in peace. We are the Galactic Coalition. We wish to speak with Earth's representatives." Dr. Alan Weber sat in the United Nations Emergency Chamber, his hand shaking slightly as he reviewed his notes. At 42, he had never expected to become humanity's voice to the stars. As Earth's leading expert in theoretical alien communication, he had spent his career writing papers that most people ignored. Now everyone was looking to him for answers. "Dr. Weber, they're ready for you," said a young aide. Alan nodded and stood up. He straightened his tie and walked to the podium. The room was packed with world leaders, military officers, and scientists. Everyone looked scared. "The coalition ship has agreed to a meeting," Alan said. "They will allow 5 representatives from Earth to board their vessel. I will lead the team." Colonel Joseph Carter stepped forward. "This could be a trap. We don't know anything about these aliens. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done it already," Alan replied. "Their technology is clearly far beyond ours." 3 days later, Alan led his team toward the alien ship in a small space shuttle. The international team included Lieutenant Samantha Reeves, a sharp-eyed military expert, Dr. Olivia Martinez, who had created new theories about alien languages, Craig Johnson, an engineer who could understand any technology, and Dr. Patricia White, who studied how life might evolve on other planets. "Look at the size of that thing," whispered Cray as their shuttle approached the massive ship. "It must have taken them centuries to build it." "Stay focused," said Lieutenant Reeves. "Remember your training." An opening appeared in the side of the alien ship, and their shuttle was guided inside by invisible forces. They landed in a vast hangar bay that could have held a small city. The air was tested and found safe to breathe. When the team stepped out of their shuttle, they saw their first alien. The creature walked forward on 4 legs. It had blue-gray skin and 3 eyes set in a triangle pattern. It wore what appeared to be a uniform with strange symbols. "I am Zorthol of the Arcturian species," the alien said in perfect English. "Welcome to the Coalition vessel Harmony. We have been observing your world for some time." Alan stepped forward. "I am Dr. Alan Weber. We represent Earth. We are honored to meet you." Zorthol led them through corridors where they glimpsed other alien species. Some floated in the air. Others had too many limbs to count. The humans tried not to stare. They arrived at a large room with a round table. Seated at the table were representatives from 7 different alien species. Each looked completely different from humans and from each other. "The coalition includes 27 advanced species," explained Zorthol. "We explore the galaxy and welcome new civilizations that prove themselves ready." "Prove themselves?" asked Dr. Martinez. "How?" "Through the test," said another alien with skin like green crystal. "All species must pass the test to join us." Alan felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of test? Zorthol's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "A series of challenges to prove your species' worth and determine your place among us. Every species we have encountered has defeated the test in their own way." "And if we fail?" asked Lieutenant Reeves. "No species has ever failed," said Zorthol. "Each finds their own path to victory. The test reveals your species' unique strengths." As they discussed the details, Alan noticed Lieutenant Reeves watching the aliens carefully. When their eyes met, she gave him a slight nod that said she didn't trust any of this. "When would this test take place?" asked Alan. "As soon as you are ready," replied Zorthol. "The future of humanity depends on it." Back on Earth, the news of the alien test spread quickly. World leaders gathered in emergency meetings. Some wanted nothing to do with the coalition. Others sought a chance to gain new technology. In the end, they decided to participate in the test, but to be very careful. Dr. Alan Weber and his team were given a special building where they could study what little information the aliens had shared. The walls were covered with pictures of strange alien creatures and notes about how they had passed the test. "Look at this," said Dr. Olivia Martinez, pointing to an image of a tall, thin alien with 6 arms. The Vex completed their test in just 3 hours. They used math to solve problems that should have been impossible. Craig Johnson nodded as he examined another file. And these Krith creatures used their hive mind to work together. They all think as one. Colonel Carter paced the room, his face serious. Every species seems to have some special ability that helped them pass. The Arcturians can read minds. The Javorians can see the future. What's our advantage? Maybe our creativity, suggested Dr. Patricia White. Humans are good at thinking in new ways. Alan rubbed his tired eyes. They had been studying for days, and he was worried. Humans didn't have telepathy or superintelligence, or any of the special abilities the other species had used. "There's something else," said Lieutenant Reeves, who had been quiet until now. "I've been comparing these reports, and some details don't match up." She laid out several papers. Here, the Arcturians say they completed the 3rd challenge by using telepathy. But in this report, it says they used technology. The stories are different. Hélène looked closely at the papers. "You're right. There are small differences in many of these reports." "I don't trust these aliens," said Colonel Carter. "Why would they lie about how species passed the test?" Dr. Martinez had been translating some of the alien texts. "I think I found something. This symbol keeps appearing next to mentions of the test." She pointed to a small mark that looked like a circle with a line through it. "In some contexts, it doesn't mean defeat, as in winning. It means to accept or to submit to." The room went quiet. "So when they say every species defeated the test," Alan started, "they might mean every species submitted to the test," finished Lieutenant Reeves. "That's very different." Craig Johnson, who had been taking apart a small device given to them by the aliens, suddenly spoke up. "Guys, I think this thing is watching us." He held up the strange metal object. "It's sending signals back to their ship." Colonel Carter took the device and placed it in a metal box. "From now on, we assume we're being watched at all times." Alan looked around at his team. "We need to be careful. We still don't know what this test really is or what happens if we fail. Or what happens if we actually win instead of submitting," added Lieutenant Reeves. 2 weeks later, the team prepared to leave Earth. They had been allowed to bring minimal equipment. No weapons, limited technology, and only the most basic supplies. As they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the Coalition ship, Dr. White pulled Alan aside. "I've been studying their biology. These aliens are very different from us, but they all share one trait. They evolved to fill specific roles in their societies. Humans are the only species that can change our roles." Alan thought about this as the shuttle doors closed. Perhaps that was humanity's advantage, their adaptability. The shuttle rose into the sky, carrying them toward the massive alien ship and the mysterious test that waited for them. The journey to the testing planet took 3 days. The human team stayed in small rooms on the alien ship. They ate strange food that tasted like cardboard, but gave them energy. They tried to rest, but sleep was difficult knowing what was coming. On the 3rd day, Zorthol came to their quarters. "We have arrived at Nexus, the sacred testing grounds. All species face their challenges here." The shuttle ride down to the planet was silent. Through the windows, they saw a world unlike anything on Earth. The sky was purple. Strange plants with blue leaves covered the hills. In the distance stood a massive structure made of black material that seemed to absorb light. "That is the testing chamber," said Zorthol. "It has existed for thousands of years. It changes for each species, creating the perfect challenges." As they landed, Alan noticed other alien ships nearby. "Are there other species being tested now?" "No," replied Zorthol. "Those are observers. Many coalition members come to witness new species taking the test. It is considered an honor. They stepped out onto the purple soil of Nexus. The air was thick but breathable. A group of aliens waited for them near the landing area. "These are representatives from recently tested species," explained Zorthol. "They have come to offer encouragement." A tall, thin alien with skin like tree bark stepped forward. "I am Vryn of the Polari. We completed the test 2 of your Earth years ago." The alien's voice was soft, almost musical. "Remember, the path that seems hardest is often the right one." Another alien, floating slightly above the ground, spoke next. "When faced with impossible choices, remember why you came." Then it added quietly, "and what you might leave behind." Alan looked at Lieutenant Reeves, who raised an eyebrow. These didn't sound like normal good luck wishes. As they walked toward the testing chamber, Dr. Martinez noticed markings carved into rocks along the path. She slowed down to study them. "Dr. Martinez, please keep up," said Zorthol. "Just admiring the scenery," she replied, but Alan saw her take quick pictures with a small camera hidden in her sleeve. The testing chamber loomed over them, impossibly tall and wide. Close up, the black surface wasn't smooth but covered with tiny patterns that hurt the eyes if you looked too long. "Before we enter," said Alan, "can you tell us more about what to expect?" Zorthol's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "The test is different for each species. It will challenge your minds, bodies, and values. Most species complete it within 1 Earth day, though some take longer." "And everyone passes?" asked Colonel Carter. "Every species finds their own way to defeat the test," Zorthol repeated. As they approached the entrance, Alan noticed more markings near the door. These were different from the ones along the path. They looked like warnings. "Are those important?" he asked, pointing to the symbols. "Ancient decorations, nothing more," said Zorthol quickly. "Now you must enter alone. No coalition members may accompany you during the test." The massive door slid open, revealing a white hallway that seemed to go on forever. "Good luck," said Zorthol. "We will monitor your progress, but cannot interfere. Remember every species before you has succeeded." The 5 humans looked at each other. Without speaking, they made a decision together. They stepped through the doorway in a tight group. As soon as they were inside, the door slid shut behind them with a heavy sound. They were alone. The white hallway began to glow. Multiple paths appeared, illuminated in different colors. "It's starting," said Craig. "Which way do we go?" Before anyone could answer, a voice spoke from nowhere and everywhere. "Welcome, humans. Your test begins now." The first challenge was a maze that kept changing. Walls moved whenever someone wasn't looking at them. The team stayed close together, with each person watching one direction. "This tests our ability to work together," said Dr. Weber. "Let's keep moving forward." After an hour, they found the exit. The voice spoke again. "First challenge completed. Proceed to physical trials." The next room was hot like a desert. Rocks floated in the air, creating a path across a deep pit. The rocks moved up and down, making it hard to jump between them. "I'll go first," said Craig. He jumped to the first rock, then the second. Halfway across, he almost fell, but caught himself. "The rocks get smaller as you go," he called back. One by one, they crossed. Lieutenant Reeves helped Dr. Martins when she struggled with a long jump. Colonel Carter was the last to cross, making it just as the final rock began to sink. "Physical trial completed," announced the voice. "Proceed to logic assessment." The third room held a large puzzle. Hundreds of small tiles needed to be arranged to form a picture. But whenever they placed a tile correctly, another would change. "This is impossible," said Colonel Carter after 30 minutes of trying. Dr. Martinez had been studying the symbols on the tiles. "Wait, I don't think we're supposed to complete the picture. Look at these markings. They're similar to what I saw outside." She arranged just 5 specific tiles in the center. The entire puzzle changed, forming a map of the testing chamber. "How did you know?" asked Dr. Weber. "The aliens we met said the hardest path is often right. I think we were meant to find a shortcut, not do the whole puzzle." The voice spoke. Logic assessment completed differently than expected. Interesting. Proceed to moral challenge. The fourth room contained a table with 5 buttons. On a screen, they saw images of 5 different alien civilizations. The voice explained, "One civilization must be removed from the coalition to make room for humanity. You must choose which one." They looked at each other in shock. "This isn't right," said Dr. White. "Why would anyone need to be removed for us to join?" Colonel Carter examined the room carefully. "This is a test of our values. They want to see if we'll sacrifice others for our own gain." "I refuse to choose," said Dr. Weber. "There must be another way." As they discussed, Dr. Martinez decoded more of the symbols she had photographed. According to these markings, many species simply chose the civilization they thought was least valuable. "And that was considered passing?" asked Lieutenant Reeves. "Yes, they submitted to the test by making the choice." Cray had been looking under the table. "There's something else here. Another button, hidden underneath." Dr. Weber got down on his hands and knees to look. "He's right. There's a 6th button." Colonel Carter frowned. "It could be a trap. Maybe we're not supposed to find it. Or maybe we are," said Dr. White. "Maybe the real test is whether we look for alternatives instead of just accepting the choices given to us." Dr. Weber reached for the hidden button. "I vote we try this instead of choosing any civilization." Everyone agreed. Dr. Weber pressed the hidden button. The room was silent for a long moment. Then the voice spoke, sounding different than before. Unexpected solution applied. No civilization removed. Proceeding to final challenge. The wall opened to reveal a dark corridor. As they walked through, Lieutenant Reeves whispered to Dr. Weber, "Did you notice? The voice said we applied an unexpected solution. That suggests most species don't find the hidden button. Or they find it but choose not to press it," replied Dr. Weber. "They defeat the test by submitting to it, just as Dr. Martinez suggested." The corridor led to a large round room with a single chair in the center. The voice spoke again. "Final challenge awaits. One must sit. One must choose. One must sacrifice." The chair in the center of the round room looked ordinary. It was made of the same black material as the outside of the building. A soft light shone down on it from above. "One must sit," repeated Dr. Weber. "But what happens to the person who sits?" No one moved toward the chair. They circled it carefully, looking for clues. "There are small holes in the floor around the chair," noticed Lieutenant Reeves. "Could be for restraints, or worse." Craig knelt down to examine the floor. "The chair is connected to the building somehow. There are tubes running from it into the walls." Dr. White touched the chair carefully. "It's warm. And I think it's alive somehow. I can feel a slight pulse." The voice spoke again. "One must sit. Time is limited." Colonel Carter crossed his arms. "I don't like this. Every other challenge had a hidden option. What's the hidden option here?" Dr. Martinez had been studying the walls. "There are more symbols here. They say something about seeing truth, and something about a dream or vision." Dr. Weber looked at each of his teammates. "I think whoever sits in the chair will see something. Maybe a vision of the future or a hard truth. I'll do it." "No," said Colonel Carter. "As the military officer, I should take the risk." "Wait," said Lieutenant Reeves. "Before anyone sits, let's all agree, no matter what happens, no matter what choices the test forces on us, we stick together. No sacrificing anyone." They all nodded in agreement. Colonel Carter sat in the chair. At first, nothing happened. Then the light above grew brighter. The colonel's eyes widened. "I can see Earth," he whispered. It's being destroyed." The room changed around them. They all could now see a vision of Earth exploding into pieces, cities burning, people dying. One must choose, said the voice. Humanity or the coalition. Only one can survive. Colonel Carter gripped the arms of the chair. This is a trick. It's not real. But the vision continued. They saw coalition ships around Earth. They saw weapons charging. You must choose to surrender Earth to save the coalition from humanity's dangerous independence. All other species chose to submit their homeworlds to coalition control. This ensures peace. Dr. Weber stepped forward. So that's what this is about. Control. They're not testing if we're worthy. They're testing if we're obedient. One must sacrifice, insisted the voice. Dr. White had been checking her small medical device. Everyone's heart rate and brain activity are changing. The room is affecting us somehow, making us more afraid. Lieutenant Reeves helped Colonel Carter out of the chair. This isn't a fair test. They're manipulating our emotions. Dr. Martinez suddenly understood more symbols on the wall. The markings say the unworthy refuse the choice. I think we're supposed to choose to sacrifice Earth. Craig had been working on something in his hands. He had taken apart their communication device and was examining its parts. Guys, I think this whole chamber is one big machine, and every test has been recording our responses. Dr. Weber looked at his team. They were all thinking the same thing. We refuse the test, he said loudly. The voice responded immediately. You must choose. All species must choose. All species have chosen. Not us, said Colonel Carter. Humans don't accept false choices. The room began to vibrate. The vision of Earth disappeared. Warning lights flashed red. Unacceptable response, said the voice. You must complete the test. You must submit. Lieutenant Reeves smiled. I think we finally found the real test, and we're the first to pass it. The walls around them changed color, from black to deep red. New doors appeared. Alarm sounds echoed through the chamber. Dr. Weber stepped toward one of the new doors. I think we just did something no other species has done before. What's that? Asked Dr. White. We broke the test. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber. A loud alarm sounded over and over. The voice now came from all directions, repeating the same message. Return to the chair. Complete the test. Submit your choice. The team ignored it. They moved quickly to examine the new doors that had appeared in the walls. This one feels warm, said Dr. White, touching one of the doors, almost like it's trying to invite us in. Lieutenant Reeves checked another door. This one is cold. And listen. She pressed her ear against it. I hear machinery behind it. Craig had taken apart more of their equipment. He used pieces to build a small device. This should help us see what's behind each door, he explained. He pressed his device against one door, then another. This one, he said finally. This door leads to a control room, I think. Colonel Carter nodded. Let's go. Dr. Weber hesitated. Wait. What if this is still part of their test? What if they want us to try to escape? Does it matter? Asked Lieutenant Reeves. We've already decided not to play by their rules. She's right, said Dr. Martinez. And I've translated more symbols. They suggest there's a way out that doesn't involve submitting. They pushed open the door Craig had chosen. Behind it was a narrow passage glowing with blue light. They followed it quickly, the alarm sounds fading behind them. The passage led to a small room filled with screens. On the screens, they could see other parts of the testing chamber. Some showed empty rooms. Others showed recordings of their own journey through the test. Look at this, said Craig, pointing to one screen. It showed aliens watching them. Zortal was there, looking worried. Other aliens were moving around quickly, some pointing at screens of their own. They didn't expect us to find this room, said Colonel Carter with a smile. Dr. Martinez was studying the controls. These symbols match ones I saw outside. I think, yes, this is a recording system. She pressed several buttons. New images appeared on the screens. They saw other species taking the test. A group of tall, thin aliens reached the chair. One sat down. They saw the same vision of their world being destroyed. Without hesitation, they chose to surrender their planet to the Coalition. They all made the same choice, whispered Dr. White. Every species gave up their independence. Cray had opened a panel in the wall. Inside were more controls. This whole place is a machine designed to break spirits. It measures responses and applies pressure until you give in. Lieutenant Reeves found another control panel. What happens if I do this? She pressed a button. The alarms stopped. And this. Cray pressed another control. The screens changed, now showing different parts of the building they hadn't seen before. Dr. Weber watched the screens. There, he pointed. That looks like an exit. Dr. Martinez was still working on the translation. According to these symbols, there's something called the true path. I think it's a way out that doesn't involve completing their test. Colonel Carter checked the door. We need to move. They'll be coming for us soon. As they prepared to leave, the screens changed again. Zorth-Ul's face appeared, larger than life. Humans, he said, his 3 eyes wide with concern. What you are doing is unprecedented. No species has ever rejected the test. Please return and complete it properly. Dr. Weber stepped toward the screen. Why? So we can surrender Earth like all the others surrendered their worlds. Zorth-Ul's eyes blinked rapidly. The Coalition requires unity. Independence leads to conflict. We choose independence, said Dr. Weber. And we reject your test. Then you leave us no choice, said Zorth-Ul. Security protocols have been activated. The screen showed armed aliens rushing through corridors. They were coming toward the control room. Time to go, said Lieutenant Reeves. She pointed to another door. That way leads closer to the exit I saw. As they hurried out, Craig grabbed some components from the control panels. These might be useful, he said. They ran through another corridor, the sound of pursuit growing behind them. They ran through dark corridors, turning left and right based on what they had seen on the screens. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of aliens in pursuit. This way, called Lieutenant Reeves, leading them down a narrow passage. Colonel Carter took up the rear position, ready to face any threats that came from behind. They're gaining on us. Cray had been working with the components he took from the control room. I think I can slow them down. He attached wires to a small device and placed it on the floor. When they pass by, it should create a barrier. They continued running until they reached a large circular room with doors all around it. Which way now? Asked Dr. White, breathing hard. Dr. Martinez studied the symbols above each door. This one, she pointed. It says exit or path out, I think. As they crossed the room, the floor suddenly became transparent. Through it, they could see a vast chamber below filled with thousands of small containers. Each contained what looked like a tiny piece of glowing material. What is that? Whispered Dr. Weber. Dr. White knelt down to look closer. Those are biological samples. Living tissue. Her face went pale. I think they're from every species that took the test. Before they could look more, the doors behind them burst open. 5 aliens entered, carrying devices that looked like weapons. Halt, commanded one, its voice harsh and mechanical. Return to the testing chamber immediately. Dr. Weber stepped forward, hands raised. We refuse. We know what your test really is. It's not about proving our worth. It's about making us submit. The alien leader's skin changed color from blue to red. All species must submit. Unity requires sacrifice of independence. Not for humans, said Colonel Carter. We choose our own path. Suddenly, Craig's device activated. A shimmering barrier appeared between them and the aliens. That won't hold them long, Craig warned. They ran through the door Dr. Martinez had chosen. It led to a long corridor sloping upward. I think we're heading toward the surface, said Lieutenant Reeves. As they ran, Dr. Weber noticed something strange. Look at the walls. These marks are different. Dr. Martinez slowed to examine them. These aren't coalition symbols. They're much older, and they say Freedom Path. They reached the end of the corridor. A large door blocked their way. Unlike the other doors, this one was covered in ancient symbols and looked like it hadn't been used in centuries. "Can we open it?" asked Colonel Carter. Craig examined the door. There's no electronic lock. It's mechanical. He pointed to a series of wheels and levers. Dr. Martinez studied the symbols. It's a puzzle. We need to turn these wheels in the right order. They heard sounds of pursuit getting closer. The barrier wouldn't hold much longer. "Hurry," urged Lieutenant Reeves. Dr. Martinez worked quickly, turning wheels based on the symbols. This says truth before unity. And this one says freedom requires courage. With a final turn, the door began to move. It opened slowly, revealing a tunnel that led upward toward daylight. They rushed through just as the aliens appeared at the end of the corridor behind them. Outside, they found themselves on a hillside overlooking the testing chamber. In the distance, they could see more coalition ships landing. "They're calling reinforcements," said Colonel Carter. Dr. Webber looked around. "We need to find a way to contact Earth, warn them about what's happening." Dr. White had been quiet, thinking. Now she spoke. "Those samples we saw, I think they're used for something. Maybe to control the species that passed the test." Lieutenant Reeves pointed to a small structure nearby. "That looks like a communication tower. Maybe we can use it." As they moved toward it, a strange ship appeared in the sky. Unlike the coalition vessels, this one was old and weathered. It descended rapidly toward them. "Is that friend or foe?" asked Craig. The ship landed nearby. Its door opened to reveal an alien unlike any they had seen in the coalition. It was small with gold skin and 4 arms. "Humans," it called out. "Quickly, come with me if you want to save your world. You are not the first to fail the test." The golden-skinned alien called itself Ven. It piloted the old ship away from Nexus as coalition vessels gave chase. "My people are the Ardari," Ven explained. 10,000 years ago, we also rejected the test. We refused to surrender our independence." "What happened to your world?" asked Dr. Webber. Ven's 4 hands moved over the ship's controls. "The coalition tried to destroy it, but a few of us escaped. We have been hiding, watching, and waiting for another species brave enough to stand against them." The ship shuddered as energy blasts from coalition vessels passed nearby. "Can this ship outrun them?" asked Lieutenant Reeves. "No," said Ven, "but it can hide." The alien pressed several buttons. The view outside the windows changed. We are now invisible to their sensors. As they flew toward safety, Dr. Martinez shared what they had learned about the biological samples. Ven nodded sadly. "The samples allow the coalition to influence the species that submit. Small implants are placed in those who pass the test. They return to their worlds thinking they made a free choice, but they are now controlled. That's why every species chose submission," said Dr. White. "They were made to accept coalition rule." Ven took them to a hidden base on a small moon. Inside were dozens of aliens from different species. Some looked ancient and weathered. Others were young. "These are the resistance," explained Ven. "All from species who either rejected the test or later broke free from control." An emergency message arrived from Earth. Coalition ships had entered orbit. They were demanding Earth's surrender, claiming the human team had failed the test. "We need to warn them," said Colonel Carter. "Tell them not to trust the coalition." "We can send a message," said Ven, "but we can do more. For centuries, we have been gathering evidence of the coalition's true nature. With your help, we can expose them to all worlds under their control." Craig examined the Resistance's communication technology. "If we broadcast the recordings we saw in the control room, showing how species were manipulated, and the biological samples," added Dr. White, "proof of their control methods, They worked together with the Resistance, preparing a massive broadcast that would reach Earth and all Coalition worlds simultaneously. Dr. Weber recorded a message explaining what they had discovered about the test. When everything was ready, then gathered them together. Once we do this, there is no going back. The Coalition will split apart. Some species will rebel. Others will remain loyal. There will be conflict. But also freedom, said Dr. Weber. Real choices, not forced submission. They activated the broadcast. Across thousands of worlds, beings saw the truth. They watched recordings of the test. They saw the biological sample chamber. They heard Dr. Weber explain how humans had refused to submit. On Earth, military forces prepared to resist the Coalition ships. But something unexpected happened. Several Coalition vessels began fighting each other. Some moved to protect Earth rather than attack it. A message came from one of the ships. It was Dorthal. Humans, he said, his voice different than before. You have broken more than the test. You have broken its hold on many of us. Some in the Coalition are now free from control. We stand with Earth. 3 days later, representatives from 24 worlds gathered at the Resistance base. Some were former Coalition members. Others were species who had been hiding like the Ardari. For too long, the test has divided us, said Dr. Weber, addressing the gathering. Those who submit and those who resist. But humans offer a third path. True cooperation without control. True unity with independence. Then stepped forward. We propose a new alliance. Not a coalition that demands submission, but a federation that respects differences. As word spread, more ships arrived. Species long thought lost returned. Others broke free from Coalition control. Earth became known across the galaxy, not as the species that failed the test, but as the species that defeated its purpose. And in the testing chamber on Nexus, the ancient doors of the Freedom Path stood open for the first time in 10,000 years.